Hi, I'm Dolly Vasta, and welcome back to Dolly's World. Tell me something. Have you ever had a member of your family, maybe a husband or a wife, a maiden aunt, or even a friend who is getting on in years, who says to you, "Will you please quit mumbling? I can't hear you." Well, we have some answers for you today, and I'd like you to meet my guest, Dr. Jeffrey Rosenbaum, otolaryngologist, and he's with the Otolaryngology Association of Central New Jersey. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
I never thought I'd get through that.
You're getting good at it. Okay.
If everyone out there just knew how many times I blew that, it'd be a miracle. Anyway, I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you, thank you.
If a couple comes in, and we'll say it's a husband and wife, and she's kind of pushing them through your door, how do you go about starting this whole conversation with him that he may be going hard of hearing?
Well, it's very common, the story you described. If a couple comes in, a husband and wife, and the wife is pushing the husband in through the door, we're not going to go very far. The real problem is people have to realize that they may be having some difficulty with communication. Frequently, a husband or a wife will say, "My spouse is not paying attention to me." And I'm not sure what that means exactly. But if they do say that I'm having trouble hearing, problem with communication, that opens the door, and then we start looking into what we can do to help out.
So what kind of testing do you do?
There are a variety of tests that we can do. The most common test we do is a hearing test. But routinely, before doing a hearing test, we'll do an examination to make sure there's no other complicating issue or something simple like earwax that might be a factor. But an audiogram is a hearing test in which we present different noises to the patient as well as a spoken word to see how they hear.
Does everyone have the same kind of hearing loss, or are there many different kinds of hearing problems?
There are different kinds of hearing problems, and I think what's very interesting is going back to your first question as to who does have hearing loss and how many people out there really do have some problems. It's kind of striking, and it really seems to be age-related. Younger people, about 12 out of 1,000 people under the age of 18 will have a significant hearing loss. And as we get older, the hearing loss seems to get more prominent. And as a matter of fact, between the age of 55 and 65, about 350 out of 1,000 will have a hearing loss of significant degree. And once we get to age 75, about 45 to 50% of people, or out of a group of 1,000, 500 out of 1,000 will have a hearing loss of significant degree.
Well, what actually happens to the ear itself?
There are different problems associated with the ear that can cause hearing losses. There can be. I have a model. I have a model of an ear.
Why don't you show us?
Okay, and there are different parts of the ear. We describe the ear as having essentially three parts: an outer ear, which is the outer ear, as well as the ear canal. Then which is shown on this model, which is the outer ear is here, and the ear canal. And the outer ear ends at this gray structure, which is the eardrum. We describe the middle ear as being from the eardrum into the inner ear structures. This snail-like structure is called the cochlea. This is the inner ear, the nerve part of the ear. The middle ear is associated with these three little bones. Remember your high school biology, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup?
Right.
Okay. The malleus, the incus, and the stapes. This is described as the middle ear. And the inner ear is a neural structure. The nerve part of the inner ear, this little snail-like structure, is attached to the brain by a nerve called the auditory nerve, which goes to the brain, which sits over here. So you can have a hearing loss associated with any of these parts.
Well, as you get older, then, do they just kind of wear out?
Absolutely. Parts do wear out, and it's thought, no one really knows exactly what happens, but in this little snail-like structure, there are different nerve cells. The little round part here is actually the hearing part, and these little squiggly round semicircular canals are actually the balanced part of the inner ear. As we get older and as the noise is constantly exposed to day-to-day activities and day-to-day noises, it's thought that some of these nerve fibers die. And as they die, the hearing tends to diminish. So it really depends on where the problem is as to what we can do to fix it. Unfortunately, there isn't much we can do about nerve damage in terms of repairing that, in terms of fixing that. There are things that can be done to repair or improve the function of the bones of the ear, as well as damage or problems in the outer part of the ear canal. Obviously, a simple problem in the outer part of the ear canal is a piece of wax or anything, a little bead that one of our little friends has placed there. Any kind of obstruction can be fixed, and that's a relatively simple problem.
Well, can anything else help your hearing? Like, you hear a lot about vitamins and different supplements. Mm-hmm. Are any of those really helpful?
I don't know if there's any real scientific evidence that there really is anything that truly improves the hearing. But whatever works is good by me. But there isn't anything out there that I know of specifically that does. Like I said, it depends on where the problem in the ear is as to what we can do about improving it. But going back to your earlier question, how do we know when someone has a hearing problem? And there are certain clues that you can, or certain complaints that people have that are very, very common.
Oh yeah, you had given them to me. Do you want to go through them, or? Okay, you go through them.
Okay, I think one of the major complaints that people will have when they come to the office and they think they have a problem with hearing is these are extremely common. I've actually written them down so I wouldn't forget them completely. People will notice that the sounds seem less clear and lower in volume. Okay. There's difficulty hearing and understanding speech. There are two parts to hearing. There is a hearing part that's associated with picking up typical pure sounds, like beep, beep noises, and then the speech is much more complicated, much more complex. And people will notice more of a problem with hearing of speech than they will with sounds. Speech of other people appears to be slurred. It's very difficult in church, movies, the TV. It seems exceedingly loud. And people have found that problems exist primarily with a lot of noise in the background. The typical story is a husband is sitting watching TV, his wife's in the kitchen, the water is running, and it's just not going to happen.
Oh, that does sound familiar. Where have I heard that one before?
That's very common.
What about the telephone?
The telephone is a device that can be adjusted for hearing problems, primarily with volume. So that doesn't appear to be that much of a problem until the hearing is really dropped off to a pretty significant level. You were talking about audiograms before hearing tests?
Well, no, on this list that you had was, do I have a problem, to ask yourself on the telephone? And I was going to talk about it before. I said, this is just my own personal thing, is that I have friends that are tired at night, and for some reason, they drop their voice down to a minimum when they're on the phone until it's so soft.
Yeah.
And it drives me buggy.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, whether that's the person is speaking more softly, or perhaps the person on the receiving end is getting more tired.
It is not my problem. But you talked before about noise in the background. Why is it so difficult for many people when you are in a restaurant? Now, granted, there is much confusion. Most restaurants, their acoustics are terrible. The tables are close. There's a lot of loud conversation going on around you. But unless you really confine yourself to talking to the person next to you, the person across the table only looks as if they're moving their mouth. You hear sounds, but you cannot get a clear conversation.
Yeah. This leads into some interesting problems with hearing. And what you're pointing to is extremely common. And I think it'd be interesting and fun to try to describe exactly what's going on there, why many people are having problems with communication. When we do a hearing test, there are different parts of sound. There are low-frequency sounds and high-frequency sounds. Low-frequency sounds are kind of like a truck on the road, a roaring kind of noise. A high-frequency frequency noise might be a clicking or an S sound or the watches with alarms. These are high frequency kind of sounds. And as people get older, the hearing loss tends to be greater at high frequency rather than low frequency. So many times you will find, or people will find, that it's easier to hear a male voice rather than a female voice, because female voices have a lot of high frequency weighting to the sound. In restaurants and in places with a lot of background noise, the high frequency problem is made worse. And so that makes the problem with speech, with communicating and understanding speech in noisy backgrounds much more difficult. This is a problem that we notice is a problem with hearing aids, because hearing aids have a very difficult time separating out the high frequency and the low frequency, and it leads to some of the questions you might have as to, or the problems that people have with hearing aids, about complaining about the increasing background noise as well as making it easy to hear.
And that's why they don't like to wear them.
Exactly. The newer hearing aids, or where hearing aids are going in the future, is they're trying to work on this high frequency issue and the problem with the background noises and making sounds more natural. But this is a major drawback of hearing aids at this point.
Well, you brought in this marvelous array of hearing aids, and I'm dying that we talk about it.
Okay.
So you started with the early ones are back here, right?
Yes.
So can I play?
Sure.
Okay.
What's the first hearing aid, first of all?
Beg pardon?
Before that, what's a better hearing aid than that? What do you think?
A trumpet?
Yeah, that's an ear trumpet.
This is an ear trumpet.
That's an ear trumpet.
But there was another one, wasn't there? And oh yes, huh?
Exactly.
That's very good.
This is
my favorite.
And that works. Turning your head towards the speaker, raising your hand, does exactly the same thing. It filters the sound. It collects the sound, shoots the sound into the ear, and makes it more comfortable. And then somebody in the late 1800s
this is wonderful. Let's see.
Decided to make a thing called an ear trumpet,
Yes, okay.
which works.
We shall.
All right.
Okay.
How's that? Sounding good?
Very good.
So you can take this home with you and play.
No, I may give it to my husband.
So this is an ear trumpet. And
It's wonderful.
It's cute. All right, this is an ear trumpet. Then this is another sort of ear trumpet. This is made of tortoiseshell, actually. And
Yeah.
this is, again, late 1800s, and it works kind of the same way. It goes into the ear.
This way.
And it just basically is cupping the ear so you can hear better. I'm not sure if it works that great, but it's better than nothing. How's that? 1, 2, 3, anything?
No, you don't sound any different.
Different.
No, wait a minute. I've
Yeah.
got it.
There you go. That's it. Okay. So these are older hearing aids, and what a hearing aid is, just the word is hearing aid, just makes it easier to hear. So what's happened is these were original ideas, and then when it came around with electricity and batteries, there were different ways of trying to amplify sound.
Well, what are these?
Yeah, well, these are all different hearing aids, and all a hearing aid is an electronic piece of machinery. Mm-hmm. Usually associated with a battery. There is a microphone in which sound goes in. There is an amplifier, which makes the sound louder. Mm-hmm. And then there is an earphone, which is a speaker. And it brings the sound in, it amplifies it, and makes it louder. The older hearing aids, remember Grandma used to have the big box, the big battery and the wire. Those were called body aids, and they're still around for certain specific uses. They're very, very powerful for people with very, very, very severe hearing losses.
Do they do implants at all?
Yeah, implants for certain specific problems, but that's becoming more common. But it's a very, very complex issue. The hearing aids are much more. Not simple, but the hearing aids seem to work better, a lot easier. So what's happening with the hearing aids are getting smaller. The hearing aids are getting better in the sense that now we're able to micro-miniaturize the electronics and allow them to provide function that never could do before.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, then we had this. Then we had this one, right?
This is still in use. This is called a behind-the-ear hearing aid.
Right.
This goes behind the ear.
You still see a lot of
These
people
work
going
quite
around
well. The smaller the hearing aid, the more difficult it is to fit. The larger hearing aids have the ability to create increase the sound greater than the smaller ones do. The smaller ones, the advantage of them obviously is the cosmetics. The hearing aids will go in the ear, and they'll go completely in the ear, and these are completely in the ear canal, and all you'll see is just this thing on the outside.
Now, why would, seriously, anyone object to that?
I don't see any reason why they would at all.
Why has it become such a vanity thing?
I think it probably goes back to this. Years ago, it was a sign of aging. People were embarrassed. They would, hold the hear, and there was a stigma associated with it in terms of you're getting older, you weren't hearing properly. It's the same thing. I look at it, the same thing as wearing eyeglasses.
Well, I was going to say, didn't they used to have hearing aids also connected to the glass, to the back, the ear part?
It was exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just the housing. It was easy because you had these big old black glasses, and there was a large space there for them to put the electronics in. The electronics have gotten smaller and better, so they found that there are other options available.
Now, there is a bitty.
Yeah.
I mean, that is tiny.
Okay.
Now, is that embedded? I mean, you can't just shove that.
Well, that's something a little different. We were talking earlier about the different kinds of hearing losses that people will have, and it depends on where in the ear the problem occurs. The hearing aids don't cure hearing. Hearing aids make sound louder and make it more comfortable for the person to hear. What this is a stapes prosthesis. Remember I was talking about the three little bones in the ear, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup?
Right.
Okay. Now it depends on where in the ear that the hearing problem is coming from. If we have a problem in the nerve part of the inner ear, there isn't much we can do in this day and age of improving that. Sure, you alluded to cochlear implants before, which is another discussion for another day, let's say. Okay. So there isn't much you can do for the inner ear, for inner ear nerve hearing losses, except for the hearing aids, which work quite well. If there's a problem in the middle ear with these three little bones, these little bones can be repaired, they can be replaced. And this is actually a replacement prosthesis. This is a dime. And this measures 0.6 thousandths of an inch in diameter. Okay? And what you do is surgically, during a microsurgical operation for a disease called otosclerosis, this little bone, the stapes bone, the stirrup bone, becomes frozen in position. The stapes bone is like a piston, and it moves up and down in a little window. And in some people, you develop a little bony growth, like a piston ring in a car, and the piston becomes frozen in position. And people will have a certain type of hearing loss that can be improved by this operation. I brought just to show the size of the relative size of these things. So this stapes bone can be removed and replaced with a prosthesis. This one is made of stainless steel, actually, and the results are quite excellent. And again, it depends on where the problems. The problems in the outer ear canal, congenital problems with the ear canal, congenital problems or injuries to the eardrum itself, these can be improved and cured. Whereas the inner ear problems are the ones we typically use hearing aids for.
When you talk about older people, and I really...
Anybody older than 18.
You certainly gave a girl a lot of leeway, didn't you? Well, I just wonder, in going to that, segueing off of older people and going to the age 18, what about the kids that listen to this raucous music and it goes on, and they've got it up so high?
Okay. The question, a good question is, why do people get hearing losses? Where does it come from? And does noise contribute to hearing loss? And the answer is absolutely yes. It depends on degree. You and I sitting here in a room, it's relatively quiet in the background, and there isn't much that's going to bother us. If it worked in a very, very loud factory, over a period of years with constant noise exposure, people... Air
guns, things like that, yeah.
Military experience, gunfire, jackhammers. The most common occupation for hearing loss, the most significant, are actually Boilermakers. These guys will climb into metal boilers and will work on the inside, and you can imagine what that does to you. But noise from music isn't necessarily going to be a problem unless it's to great excess. Rock concerts, if you've gone to rock concerts and you walk out of a rock concert,
I try to avoid them.
all right, or you walk out of a party that there's been a loud band for a whole night, and it's exceptionally loud, you're going to notice your ears are going to be ringing, and you'll notice that your hearing may be temporarily diminished. The following morning you wake up and it starts coming back. But if you keep on doing this over and over and over again, then those little nerve fibers in the inner ear can be permanently damaged and can cause a certain type of high-frequency hearing loss.
So those little nerves, from what you just said before, in the inner ear, then there's not a lot that can still be done for them, correct?
Correct. Once those nerve endings have been damaged or killed, that's permanent. And depending on how many have been killed or not functioning, that may relate to the degree of hearing loss that you have.
So it is important, really, to forget about the vanity point of it. And I mean, it's no different than having bridge work or anything else, I think, done. I myself would want to hear conversation. I don't want to be left out. And there must be an awful lot of people who are left out or hear 3 words out of a sentence and they don't really hear the entire gist of it.
Yeah, it's really a problem. It's a problem. That's a very good point, because very frequently people will come to the office with a family member who is sitting there very quietly. The patient, the grandmother, is sitting there very, very quietly, and I'm talking to the daughter or the granddaughter, and it's quite obvious that grandma is not hearing what's going on here. Okay, we do hearing tests, and it's quite clear that grandma has a hearing loss. And the sad thing is, once you talk to grandma and get grandma's attention, grandma is quite sharp. And at dinner, grandma's sitting there, the conversation's going on back and forth, and grandma's sitting there and smiling and shaking her head, but hasn't got a clue what's going on with the conversation. And everybody's assumption is that grandma is just losing it. Whereas, in fact, grandma's not losing it. Grandma's just not hearing.
So you're really losing out on life.
Absolutely. I think so.
Your whole quality of life is shot because of one little thing. You don't want to be seen with a little pink thing in your ear.
Well, your life isn't shot. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that if you had one thing to say, and because we're running out of time, believe it or not, and I'm getting all these signals over here, what would you say? There's your audience, there's your camera, you're the doctor.
Yeah. Well, in terms of hearing losses, I think the most important thing that people can carry away from today is that it's really a shame for grandma to be sitting at the dinner table and someone says the moon is made of green cheese. Grandma's sitting there shaking her head.
Yes.
Yes. And the immediate assumption is grandma's just out there. Okay. Whereas in fact, if it is related to a hearing loss, there's no reason not to look into something that can be done to help her out. And that's a pretty simple problem to do. These hearing aids work. I've been told I should get one. I'm reluctant to do it because you have this thing about a hearing aid, something being put in your ear, but they do work. And so I don't think there should be any real problem with the stigma, and there should be no stigma associated with these problems. It's like wearing eyeglasses. So I think that's the most important thing people should pick up from today, I think.
And you're there to help, not to hurt, not to hinder. And that's such a, I don't know, I just think, good Lord, without your hearing, you've really lost so much.
There's a lot of family life that you miss. And absolutely, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Just communicating, and it's a pretty simple process to take care of.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming today. I've enjoyed it, and I just know of a few people around our house who should become glued to this show.
All right.
And see if it does them any good. And for all of you out there, how many of you out there really hear an entire show, or somehow during a conversation you do, huh? I didn't quite get what you said. Come on now, admit it. I hope you all enjoyed the show and got as much from it as I did. I'll see you all next month, and in the meantime, take care.